So hi everybody, it's Michael Hollands here for Sound of the Movies. Today I have the pleasure to talk to Jeff Rona. And Jeff right here at Soundtrack Cologne.
I touched a button.
That's no problem, that's cool. Just leave.
Okay.
We're here at Soundtrack Cologne in Germany. And Jeff is actually one of the most experienced composers for film and television. And he also gave a lecture yesterday and also today. Workshop on game music, and I'm very glad he's here with me today, and thank you so much for joining me here.
I'm really happy to be here, and it's really nice to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. Jeff, could you tell me more about how you got started in the business and how it all worked out for you?
I got started because before I was writing music for other people, I was just writing in my bedroom and doing weird experimental electronic things, and nobody was listening to my music, which is fine because it probably wasn't very good. And I was doing kind of more art music and weird electronic experimental things. But what I was doing in addition to that was I was programming synthesizers and sequencing for other composers. And I started off working more in records, like I was working with record producers, doing electronics for pop albums. And there were 2 or 3 producers that I did a lot of work for in pop and R&B, and I learned a lot, just production. But later, I was working almost only with film and television composers who needed help. When I got started, you didn't have so many presets and so much software, so electronic scoring was a little more challenging, but it was also becoming much more important. Mm-hmm. And so I was programming for all these people, some famous, some not famous. But sometimes they would say, "Hey Jeff, I'm a little bit getting behind in the schedule. Could you just help me finish a piece of, a scene?" So I would do a scene here and a scene there, and so I became a ghostwriter, and which is really the best training, because when you're a ghostwriter, if you do a bad job, it's the other person who gets blamed, because you're the secret writer. So you get the experience and the education and a little bit of money, but no blame, no responsibilities. So I did that for a few years. Okay. But from 1 scene, then 2 scenes, then 5 scenes, then, hey, I'm doing a movie, but I got offered another movie. You do that movie while I do this movie, and don't tell anybody. And I didn't mind, I liked it. I liked doing all of that. But then, I was doing all this other writing, and then I had these opportunities to start doing my own scores. And, I started mostly in television, and then a few films, and then a few more films, and then more television, and then starting into some video games many years later. And it just, people ask me back to do more sometimes, and sometimes they don't. But, I got started because I was very lucky that I had a skill that other composers would need, but that was my school. That was my music school, was being a ghostwriter for other composers, and then the next school was being the composer.
So it's basically step by step, always.
Yes, it was very slow.
I can imagine tough business and always. But you did a lot of television, and I remember specifically Chicago Hope, which is just a series which I enjoyed very much. Back then, when I was also in my teens, he did also Traffic or The Critic. Which one of those TV shows represents your favorite or your biggest challenge?
That's a good question. The very first television show that I ever worked on was a show called Homicide. Yeah. And I don't know if it was ever shown here, but it was it was an important show in many ways because it was the first television show. It was very experimental for its time, and many other shows have imitated this style of this show, which was a police show but filmed like a documentary. Handheld camera, very unpolished, So it didn't look like a TV show, and it was a little more violent, it was a very dark show. And the first decision they made was they wanted the show to have no music. And they wanted to be the first TV show to have no music. Nobody had ever done it before. But I had worked on a movie with the people who had created this show, and I had done some experimental things. And Hans Zimmer was with me, and we worked on a couple of things. We worked on one thing together, and something about this approach of very ambient music, very almost like sound design, almost not music.
Yeah.
And what I did was I sampled sounds from radios and police jails, and I created these very moody sounds that became a lot of the score. But then on top of that, I would add like one note melody, just something so simple and slow that you barely thought of it as music. And so really this was the first TV show to have really ambient sort of sound design style of writing, which became popular later. But we got to do it first, and it was because the director, producer was very bold with the style of the visuals and the style of the acting, which was very natural, and the style of the music. So the very first thing I got to do was very experimental and very unique. Then later, I started to do other TV shows like Chicago Hope, which was the opposite. That show was acoustic guitar melodies and strings and trumpet and some few little ethnic instruments, even though it's a movie in a hospital, nothing to do. But again, they let me be a little bit experimental, but the music was very melodic, you would say traditional music.
Yeah.
And since then, I've done, I think, just sort of everything in between, and, so I've grown since then. I don't listen very much to the music I write, but, I think that it was a great start to be able to do something one day very traditional, one day very experimental.
Yeah.
And now, most of what I do is sort of in between the two.
Okay. I think, your musical style is something that resonates with me.
Good.
And my favorite score of yours, well, maybe it's the obvious choice, but it's White Squall.
Very first movie I ever did by myself.
Yeah. And Ridley Scott directed it, and Hans was also around to produce the score.
He was my producer.
How did you get involved with Hans and Ridley?
Well, Hans Zimmer was one of those composers that I became a synthesizer programmer as his, to just help him do cool stuff. We were introduced by a friend who was selling electronic instruments, and Hans had just moved to Los Angeles. My friend was selling him different pieces of equipment and said, I have this friend Jeff Rona, and we should meet. So we met, and we became very good friends very fast. And so I did a little bit of synthesizers on 2 or 3 movies with him. And more. And I've probably worked on 10 or I don't know how many. A lot. And Hans was working, I don't remember what movie he was doing, but Hans was working on a movie. And Ridley Scott, and they'd already done a couple movies together. They did Thelma and Louise.
Black Rain?
And that's Tony Scott.
No, Black Rain is Ridley.
It is?
Yes.
Black Rain?
Black Rain is Ridley.
Okay, I believe you. I forgot that. At any rate, Ridley had done this movie called White Squall about a group of boys on a ship. And a very different movie for him, a slightly more traditional style of storytelling, but with all of his skill as a director. And he had hired a composer, an Academy Award-winning composer, to write the score. And the composer did the score and really hated it. And one of the problems was that this was a composer who did not do demos. So Ridley was hearing the music for the first time in front of an orchestra. But it's even a little stranger because the movie had a temp score. You know, he put it, and it was this composer's music from specifically one movie that was used for a lot of the music in his temp score. And the composer simply did more of exactly the same music, which you think is the right thing to do. You think, they hired me because of this score, they love this score, the score is already in the edit, so let me do something like this. But somehow there was a miscommunication, a lack of communication between the director and the composer, where really Ridley wanted something different, but somebody who understood that score.
Okay.
So, you know, I wasn't there and I didn't know any of this. I only found this out much later. But really in the middle of this orchestral session, he left and he called Hans. He said, Hans, I have a problem. I have this film where it's behind schedule, we have to finish it. We don't have any extra time. It has to be done in 3 weeks. And I have to start the score all over again. So Hans was doing another movie, and he had a commitment, he had a contract that he had to do this one movie and couldn't do another movie. And I don't remember what the movie was. But Hans did a very nice thing. He said, well, I don't have time, but I have this new young composer, and I think he'd be perfect for you. So Ridley said, let's meet. So literally the same day, the three of us are having dinner, and Ridley says, you know, if Hans thinks you can do it, I trust him. He wouldn't tell me something wrong. Do you know what to do? I said, yeah, I can do it. Well, you know, I don't know. I mean, I was very nervous. You know, we've never met before. I didn't even see the movie. I knew nothing about anything. But can I write a score in 3 weeks and record it with a live orchestra? And I said, yes. So, and record it in London, which means you have to leave extra time to go there and get ready. I'm in Los Angeles, so Ridley says, okay, I'll see you, you know, but I'm going to listen to demos because I could do mock-ups on my computer. So I spent several days writing themes, ideas, just sketches, actually just on a piano. And I came up with a melody that I really liked. And I said, Hans, let me play you this theme. And I played for him and he sits there. And I thought I'd written this grand, beautiful theme that was sort of in the style of grand Hollywood. Because the movie, I'd seen a couple of scenes and the photography is so beautiful and it's really big. And Hans said, Jeff, you're missing the idea completely. I didn't recommend you to go off and write and sound like somebody else. I thought of you because I think your music that I like is exactly what this movie needs. Just do exactly what you want to do, and I think it's going to be right. And I was doing Chicago Hope at the time, so I had a friend take over for 3 episodes, and I sat down and I wrote a score that was the score that I wanted to do. And on the very first, so I wrote a few minutes, and Ridley was flying back and forth because he was cutting the movie in England. He had a new wife who he was spending time with in France, and then he would come back in LA to check on me. So he came back maybe a week later, and now that means only 2 weeks to go. And I play him my very first theme. And he just has his head down, because this is a big thing. This is a $50 million movie, and he's like this. He has his head down, and he's not in a good mood. And I play this piece of music, and he does this. He gives me thumbs up that he's happy, and then after that, it went very well. He liked my first idea. That was my idea. That was in my style, and it was electronics, but with a penny whistle, which is an Irish, Scottish instrument. Of course, Ridley Scott, so there's a connection to this Celtic, Gaelic thing in the movie, which takes place in the Caribbean Ocean. But I wrote music that was very electronic, plus orchestra, plus world instruments from many places, from steel drums that you do find in the Caribbean, to gamelons that you don't find in the Caribbean, to Celtic instruments that you don't find in the Caribbean, and a couple of Indian instruments, but with a bed of electronic instruments, which he really likes. I mean, obviously Ridley Scott has been one of the very first champions of electronic music in films.
I'm jealous.
And so I had 21 days to write it. I finished on the 18th day. So I had 1 day to rest and then pack up all my equipment and get on an airplane. And of course my equipment that back then was stacks and stacks. We put them all in cases, and my music editor and I flew, and we recorded it with the London Symphony at Air Studios for 2 days. And then I stayed in England for the mixing, and we mixed at Shepperton Studios, which Ridley owns. He had just bought it with his brother. Tony and Ridley own this historic film production play facility, this big, all these sound stages. So I spent a week or two there working on the mix of the film. And that's what that was. So, it was him taking a chance on a brand new composer. It was me taking a chance on failure. It was Hans Zimmer taking a chance on making a suggestion for a film that was in trouble. It was the Walt Disney Company that had financed the movie, who didn't know me, and they were very upset that they'd already paid for the first score.
The sessions.
They already paid for an orchestra. They'd already paid an Academy Award-winning composer a fee that I'm sure was 5 times higher than mine. I made nothing. I made very little. I mean, it was something, and to me at the time it was like $1 million, but it was actually almost nothing. And of course, but once I got started, Hans left me alone, Ridley left me alone, so I could just focus and do my thing. I would do a few things. Hans, what do you think of this? And he'd say, I like it, but what if, maybe a little more of this, a little less of that. So he stayed involved, but just with a very light touch.
Right. I mean, I like those stories. I bet every composer has a tremendous amount of fascinating stories. And I'm always interested in film production, how these things come together, and maybe also the struggle of finding the right theme. I personally think that's absolutely totally interesting. In terms of White Squall, all the pressure, how long were your working days? I mean, how many hours a day did you try to, or did you actually write?
All day, as much as I could, until I was exhausted. I can't really sleep during the day. I wake up very early.
Okay.
Even if I go to bed very late, I still wake up very early. So I just didn't sleep very much. But, you have a job, you do the job. There's no way a composer really knows how long it takes to write a piece of music. It's impossible. How long does it take to write 1 minute of music? Sometimes it takes 1 minute, sometimes it takes 1 week. But the good thing is once you write those first things, once you get started, and once the door is open, then it gets faster and faster and faster.
So, I think in terms of you just mentioned, well, of course, Hans, and previously you mentioned the ghostwriting part. Hans is someone who is comfortable with collaboration.
Sure.
And you've worked with him on a couple of movies. Mission Impossible 2, you were also involved?
I worked on, I'm going to forget most of them, but Black Hawk Down, Lion King,
Thin Red Line.
Thin Red Line, Mission Impossible, a couple of little movies whose names I forget. Everlasting Peace, which was a little Irish movie, weirdly, but directed by an American director. A little bit on Pacific Heights. Oh, I worked on Backdraft, the movie about firefighters.
Yeah, I love that one, sure.
And then a few more that I'm forgetting.
Okay. Do you, when it comes to working with a director, do you find it more, actually, well, let me rephrase. Do you think you can do your best work when everything gets approved right away? Or do you feel that you are inspired by the struggle?
Well, no, because to write, you have to come from a place of at least a little confidence. And the more you worry about yourself, the slower you're writing, because you play a note and you go, ooh, maybe not. So you play another note, ooh, maybe not. Play another note, I don't know, well, I'll try this one and then I'll go on to the next note. And I just want to be careful. We're going to run out of time, but we'll keep going. No, I'll tell you, the thing about the struggle is when you know that you have very little time, then you really just get focused. Even really great composers, they learn how to procrastinate. Yeah. They learn how to just, it's like it's your first day writing, so you think, oh, I have so much time. I think I'll go for a walk. I think I'll go shopping. I think I'll go, play with my kids, or we'll go to the zoo. And then second day, I still have plenty of time. But when you think to yourself, in 10 days this is going to be finished, and I have no idea how I'm going to do that. It doesn't even seem remotely possible. A deadline, that's inspiring. The struggle of writing and having a director say, let's try something different, this isn't quite right, let's keep trying something different. That's not so inspiring, because it really, after a while, it feels like you're just wasting your time.
That absolutely sounds very true. And the deadline, as terrifying as it may be, can also kind of set off or trigger something that you haven't thought of before.
Yeah.
And many composers would say, well, having too much time, the luxury of having too much time is a bad thing. And they say start really going at it in the last maybe 6 or 8 weeks. So I think it's always depends on how you are wired personally. But I think nowadays there is always a terrifying deadline or something that's up.
Yeah, and in a funny way, I blame technology. It's gotten so much easier to produce music, and it's gotten so easy to produce music faster as the software gets better, as the technology gets better, as the computers get faster. You have fewer and fewer excuses why something should take longer. So you're writing all the time, that you don't have to wait for the technology anymore. It used to be, it took so long to load, and then you go to the synthesizers and call up your patches and all these things. Now, the process is so much more simple because it's so much better. So, because of that, and it's even worse for film editors, who, as the video editing software has gotten better, now directors want to see things 3 different ways. What if we start on that shot? What if the scene starts with that? What if we take out that? Let's try it, what if? And so a little bit that can happen with music, but I don't think nearly as bad as it happens with picture editors and modern editing software. Composers are, producers understand. They know the technology. They know what a composer can do in a day. They know what a composer can do without a live orchestra or without a live guitar. They know, and they take advantage of, because they'll say, okay, 10 days. We think that's enough. Yeah.
Do we have time for one more question?
Let's do one more.
I remember you posted on Facebook that people should suggest possible locations for a band gig. Has there been any progress? Are you planning?
Yeah. We're talking with a tour booking group to help us. We looked into this year, but we were too late for the season of booking. But we're talking to them again about something in a year.
Also possible. So Germany will be.
I hope that's my goal would be to maybe start here and do some Europe.
Right. That would be really awesome.
And I'm releasing an album. What I'm working on right now is a release of an album of this not film score music. It's this my own brand of kind of cool style ambient music.
Or some sort of concept album?
No,
not really. Okay.
Just the music that I was thinking about for a long time and didn't really fit into a movie, so it fit onto an album, and I like it. It'll be out at the end of October, called Projector.
Okay, right. Do you have any big movies or any movies lined up?
Yeah, there's a big movie that'll be that'll be out next year, that I can't say. But it's a science fiction movie. I'm excited about it. It's going to be something really unique and different. And there's a big video game coming out next year that I've been working on, but I'm not allowed to talk about it. I just finished an American television series that's been very popular in the US, but I don't think it's here yet. That's coming out sometime. A very dark comedy. But my job is the dark, not the comedy.
Okay. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, just that, here in Germany, the interest in what I do is so much greater than the interest back where I live. I mean, there's film music fans, there's film music websites, and there's film music journalists. I think there's a different feeling about it, and I think there's a deeper appreciation, a deeper desire to understand the process and the people, and it's a little more celebrated here, and I think it's wonderful. What we do is very behind the scenes, and it's getting a little more mainstream interest, but I think here there's just a deeper knowledge, and I think it's because there's a deeper respect for art and artists here than there is where I come from, and a deeper willingness to express that appreciation and to talk. It's about having a conversation like the one we're having right now.
I mean, to me, film composers, television composers, to me they are the best musicians in the world. I mean, I really have this firm belief that film music could be or should be considered the biggest musical art form that we have. I mean, at least that's my belief. And I have an enormous amount of respect for singer-songwriters. I love pop music, I love rock music, 50s, the 60s, and the 80s. But to me, nothing compares to the power and magic of a movie score. And I have an enormous amount of respect for composers, and I think it's just wonderful that this art form becomes more and more appreciated, that people start thinking outside the box and start meeting the people who's responsible, who's writing the music, and this catching on is just a wonderful thing. Here in Cologne, everything is just so friendly. People are getting along. You can talk to the composers, and that's just joy. Just as you just pointed out, I love having these conversations. I could probably go on for hours and hours, but I'm afraid
next time.
I'm afraid we are out of time. And Jeff, I would like to thank you so much for your time. I totally appreciate it, and see you next time.